Hi, my name is Kyle Stephan, and I'm one of the curators of We Live, Memories of Resistance, the current exhibition up at Oxy Arts. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce you to Yunuen Rhi, an anthropologist, a performance artist, a movement instructor, and in plain sight artist who'll be leading a special workshop on internal martial arts next Thursday, October 8th from 11 to 12 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. In our gallery exhibition at Oxy, the artists explore paths both real and imagined, mining historical archives, personal memories, and ancestral forms of knowledge and survival to reframe and reimagine our collective present and futures. Yunuen's healing practices approach the idea of collective memory from the body itself, using it as a conduit for accessing ancestral knowledge and self and community healing. It's our hope that our conversation now might give you an introduction to Yunuen's healing and movement practices, so you might join us next Thursday for our workshop. First, I'm going to read their bio. Yunuen Rhi is a two-spirit martial movement instructor, anthropologist, performance artist, and healer whose roots are in Mexico, the United States, and Korea. Rhi has cultivated Western, Eastern, and Native medicine pathways and practices as a way to deepen the understanding of selves. Rhi has worked with Native communities in Mexico and their migrant counterparts in California in relation to Native language and culture revitalization. Rhi's performance interest lies in ritual and social practice as a way to create effective bridges between performance and community needs in a decolonial setting. Thank you so much for joining us today, Yunuen, and for agreeing to lead this workshop.
Thanks, Kyle.
Maybe we can start by elaborating on some of the information in your bio about your own history and your path to these healing practices and methodologies.
Yes, of course. So I'm originally from Mexico City, and I grew up in San Diego. So I'm a migrant of a migrant of a migrant. And for example, my great grandmothers came from Korea to Mexico, and I have also, as we know, colonial history, a lot of European people coming to Mexico. And so there's like this interweaving of migration stories that, of course, cause some kind of fragmentation along the way. So my interest in anthropology actually was going back to roots. And this is the work that I've been doing, kind of regathering myself, going back to different sites where I came from. So in Mexico, I went back to Mexico. I did a lot of field work there in Oaxaca. And I worked also with migrants from Oaxaca in California, Mixteco community primarily. And this has led me also to start to investigate different ways of creating potent medicines. So all this experience of having worked with the communities and in ceremonial instances, and also the martial art training that I have from China. So I went back to Korea. I have gone to Korea, and I went to China especially, and spent more time there training with my first teacher and currently with my second teacher in Japan in the practice called Baguazhang, and it's an internal martial arts system from China. So all of these pathways, I see them as kind of root gatherings, how to gather back your roots and integrity of maybe fragmentation that has come along the way. So all of my offerings are oriented towards that. So if there's people that are also in a similar situation, which we all are here, we're all migrants to this country, to these territories of Tonga tribe lands, in this case in Los Angeles, that need to be honored first and foremost as we do the work. And so I think that this time calls for other pathways. Right? So something's not working in our own systems. There's some kind of disconnection in our own medical system, also to attend to mental health issues. What are these problems? Why are they coming up right now? There's no solution somehow. Or if people are looking to see where everything's shut down because of COVID, people cannot go to meditation centers. So it's a really frustrating time. So I'm really happy to provide some tools for everyone. And having had the privilege to leave the US and to do, interweave my own histories through, the research and field work, through the martial art training in different places, I want to come back to where I grew up, which is California, with my arms full. So I want to provide, tools for everyone. And one of the prime tools is the internal martial art practice of Baguazhang, which teaches to basically hack the body, So maybe our alignment is off. And this is what I'm going to go into detail about in the workshop. And also in combination with some of the ceremonial pathways that have to do with the warrior path. Because the warrior path is not necessarily to fight like a combat, physical combat, it's a spiritual combat. It's how are we relating to ourselves? How are we accountable to ourselves and our surroundings, right? So this is part of something that we need to solve as people who are migrants to this place. Mm-hmm. We were never accountable to these lands and to what is happening to the people and the keepers of these lands. So when we start to be accountable to ourselves, to our own broken histories, and to start to create new weavings, then we can start to heal, right, from this kind of what I call intergenerational trauma. I don't like to use the word trauma, but I'll explain also why, but this is a reference that people can relate to. And so all of this was very important as far as IPS, their invitation from Rafa and Castles to participate in the project. Because I was able to fly actually my text over San Diego where I grew up. And it's a context that I know because I worked with communities, migrant communities there. And so this is why my message at that moment was, your taxes cage kicked. Mm-hmm. So how are we accountable as citizens of a country that is replicating a eugenics movement in the present? Something that was supposed to be solved in the past, and all the history of civil rights movement and all the fights that were led by amazing leaders, how come we're backtracking now? There's something going on that's terribly wrong, and we are all complicit in that as taxpayers. So this is why I wanted to, provide these messages, and that all reconnects back to the work that we have to do, each person, in our own setting, no matter who we are. And so that's a little bit about some background.
And as I mentioned in the introduction, your work really enhances the offerings of the exhibition in the sense that this exploration of the body as a conduit of knowledge. And I'm really interested in the ideas that you're putting forth around how the bodies hold intergenerational information and how we can use embodied healing practices as a way to connect with lost histories through displacement. Can you talk a little bit more about these ideas around intergenerational knowledge and its basis in the cultures you've studied?
Yeah, of course. So as a migrant myself to the US, what I noticed is like kind of a rupture in values between, for example, the generation before me, say like my parents and myself. We had a different experience in growing up, right? So if my parents grew up in Mexico and I grew up here, that already is something that separates us. And it shouldn't, but it has to do with language too, right? So some people that migrated here, a lot of people were ashamed in speaking their language. Today, maybe it might be changing. But I mean, you can think of even people that came from Germany, from Poland, and all these places. They were shamed out of their language. And so what's the result? That language carries information systems. It's an information system. So when you lose track of that, then you lose track of something about your own spirit. And so this is why we have to recover ways of communicating, right? And maybe some ancestral knowledge of connecting back and at least honoring our people, that they came from somewhere. They came from an earth-based practice along the way. Everyone did. So we have to acknowledge that and also reconnect to some language here. So, people don't know even how to greet the earth in Tonga language. that should be like a requirement, basic requirement for people here. You know, if you want to honor the land, then be able to do that. I know a little bit of Kumeyaay, but this is another tribe land, so I should be learning this system. And so this about how that relates to the body is that because we carry this kind of fragmentation, there's also a split inside the body. Mm-hmm. And so if we're able to bring the body together, unite it as a channel for our spirit, then we were able to be actioning as a whole and complete person. But sometimes in mental health, when we're talking about mental health issues, it's like we're functioning disparately. So it's like the body is wanting something, the mind is wanting something else, and then your spirit's wanting something else. So imagine if your spirit's already broken because you don't know the line where you came from, then it's a lot of brokenness that we're handling. So we have to be able to find ways to glue that together. Mm-hmm. And so this is why I feel that my work coming back to the US, coming back to Los Angeles, was to create these spaces. First of all, gathering spaces, collective collaborations of performance, and also dialogues. You know, so some of my first work here had to do with creating like a container, what I call constelación huarache, which is like a container that I started with some people that joined me in these conversations about how religion affected their connection to their family, growing up queer and maybe a person of color in the US. So this is kind of the disconnections and going back to these little details of what happened. And it was interesting that nobody had actually talked about that. You know, it was something that they had kept for themselves, and they grew up with, but nobody had, like, they hadn't had an opportunity to converse about it, which was very interesting. Because then started to find a lot of ways that we have been separated, right? Mm-hmm. And so these like little details are important because they take a toll inside ourselves. You know, maybe they leave a little scar in our heart at one point that we need to kind of heal over. Mm-hmm. And so how are we going to heal that over? And so this is what I want to bring back, like some knowledge that I received in China about how to connect the body and how to connect the body to the spirit, because these are Taoist practices. They were they had some part in Chinese martial art history, but also in Taoist temples, people were practicing this. And what does that mean? It means a lot, because if Taoists were people who lived a long time, it was because of the practices they were doing and the way they were connecting themselves and nature. Mm-hmm. So these are ways that we can recover some of this information. Even if we've lost it, there's ways to, first of all, hack the body by taking out all of these instances of, of pain or hurt. Mm-hmm. And then how do we heal? We can heal by connecting to our surroundings, to the elements around us, you know, to the sites like certain mountains, certain places and nature around our location. Right? And when we're connecting just even to the earth or a tree next to our yard, you know, that's already very important. So how can we do that? How can we continue that dialogue, which is the dialogue that Native people have with the land? Mm-hmm. We should be able to do that. Right? It's the oldest wisdom. Everyone as a human can connect to that. So if we start from that base, instead of talking and giving too much information to trauma, then we can start to kind of reweave kind of all the, you know, these intricacies that can form our complete being. Mm-hmm. And so this is what I want to talk about on the day of the workshop, how to do that. And I will also be giving some practices, some standing postures that we start off with in internal martial arts training that are, yeah, very basic, but very powerful. so that people can have tools and can use these tools after the workshop so that they can start to connect to themselves and the earth, right? So this is, I hope that kind of summed up more of your question. Yeah, let me know if I'm missing some part.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think on a practical level, people may be coming to this from the first time. Can they enter this workshop from any place in their surroundings? Do they need to bring anything? Do they just bring themselves?
Yeah, I think they can bring themselves, and they can bring, if they want, an intention that they want for themselves, you know, a vision of what they would like for themselves. And we could work with that. But there's no requirements, and I don't work with any extra, you know, objects around. It's just tapping into our own energy. And I will elaborate more about like some of the history and also some questions related to this intergenerational gap, right? And our disconnection to our own ancestry. I will be certainly talking about that and focusing more from that perspective.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if folks would like to read more about this or get to know your practice, is there somewhere they can go to find out more information aside from the Oxy site?
Yeah, of course, they can go to isuini.com, I'll write it down, isuini.com. So that's my website. And there's some more information there that they can read about the practice and about the feeling benefits of the practice and about myself, so more about my bio, because I do incorporate some of the knowledge from ceremonial setting. So basically my anthropology field work took me to ceremonial work. Because then it was like, instead of becoming just like a scholar and someone studying subjects, you know, I became someone that took back this information and asked the communities what they needed and tried to find ways to bring back something that they needed or actually dialogue with them. You know? So I was kind of breaking this kind of structure that we're trained in academics. And I did it through ceremonial ways, you know, being a translator for ceremonies for elders that went from the US to Mexico to share this knowledge with indigenous people down there. And also then bringing back that information to like Apache communities and just being like kind of like a weaver, weaving back information through the border, despite the border, just how it has been for a lot of, I mean, before the US was created or before Mexico was created, that's the way it was. And it still is, there's a circulation of people. So it's just remembering the circulation and just readdressing that. So this is, a little bit about also how bringing in ceremonial aspects to the work and the vision, and also bringing together information systems, so Taoist internal martial arts systems, warrior pathways of like Toltec wisdom together. And this is what I feel that we need to create. We need to create new medicines. New medicines, and we have all the tools here to do that. So thank you for this opportunity, and I'm really excited to share with everyone.
Yeah, thank you for your sharing that about your history and a little bit of introduction about how you came to these practices. And if you're watching and you're interested in these ideas and you'd like to participate in the workshop, it'll be next Thursday, October 8th at from 11 to 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And you can go to the Oxy Arts website to register. We're also going to be sharing all the registration information on the In Plain site and Oxy social media channels, so look out for that. And we really hope you'll join us. Thank you so much, Yunuen.
Thank you, Kyle. Have a good day.
You too.